Welcome to the Archive Room podcast.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Fastamai, I'm Judith Lay, and I'm very pleased to find you waiting for me at the door to the Archive Room, the place where we keep stories of island life in years gone by, told by the people who were there. So come on in, sit down and make yourself comfortable, and let's listen to this week's selection. In April 2015, history was made at the Manx Music Festival when Laurence Kermode became the oldest competitor ever to win a class in the Guild. After a strong performance in the folk song class, he went on to win the class dedicated to the works of Manx poet T.E. Brown, sweeping aside such skilled rivals as John Kenyock. And all of this at the age of 100. We could devote a whole series of programmes to the adventures of a man who was born to entertain. So I hope you'll enjoy some early years memories when Laurence Kermode shares them a little later in the programme. But first, let's welcome ETHEL GALE from a farming family down north. She was aged 98 when David Collister recorded this conversation, but I'm guessing that she didn't look anything like that age, and she certainly doesn't sound it.
I don't know how old you are. You may not want to tell me.
Well, I was born in 1902.
You weren't.
I was.
Really?
Yes.
1902. Were you brought up on a farm then yourself?
Yes, I was. I was seeing after the poultry, really, and red chickens under hens. We had them in a little paddock in barrels and putting a sack of straw on the top and lifting them up from the bottom with bricks. Well, you see, we had these hatching hens, and putting the eggs on there. And then another thing, they were getting in the year, we read about 200 because there was a place in Yorkshire and you would get word at night, say, your order of chickens will be at Bellacowl Gate at a certain time tomorrow. See to it. And they were always there at the very time.
Yes. Who collected them then?
I didn't go to collect them, but
No.
one of the men folk did.
Oh, yes. Were they about a day old or what were they?
Well, that was it. They were only little. We used to get a saucer and dip their beaks in it to get them started. And they were very interesting. I don't think we ever had any dead ones coming.
No.
And then they were with hens. We had them in barrels. Then, one night, it was well boarded and a good door on. Would you believe it? A ferret had got in. And he had bored a hole in a good door. I don't know how he done it. And there was the dead hen sitting on little chicken's lap. Oh, didn't I cry?
Yeah.
But anyway, we had other hatchy hens and we moved them, you see, and got them. But how that ferret got that board, I don't know.
Did you catch the ferret?
No, not that time at all. But I remember coming up the field once, and a ferret is awfully hard to kill. And there was a ferret. I seen a ferret. Oh, I said, I don't want to see a ferret. And he was there in the field anyway. And there was one or two of the labourers coming after him, and I was coming. And, they lullabies the ferret. And they followed me, and they said, he'll never get up again. He's finished. And while they were talking to me, if he didn't get up and get in the hedge.
So they're tough creatures.
They are.
You'd only be a teenager then, wouldn't you?
Yes, I was.
Aye. Did your mother teach you to cook?
Oh, I should say so. You see, the maiden folk, they were on the farm. It was horses they had that time.
Yeah.
They didn't have tractors.
No.
And there was no press the button. And there was get on your knees and scrub the floor.
Scrub the floor. Which farm was this, Ethel?
The first farm that Father was in, you went in at the Lane Trench and in a long road, and it was called Bellaclucas. It belonged to J.D. Clegus's Thornhill. And there was a trench down at the bottom. It went along the fields would it be the width of 2 fields or 3 fields? I don't know now. But there was a person cleaning that trench all the time and kept it lovely and clean.
Yes.
But each farmer had to pay according to how many fields he had. And the fellow on the other side would be paying something too.
They had to keep it drained.
Yes, and it went right out to the river, into the sea. It was wonderful, but they kept that clean. I was saying that there was a time I had an uncle that was a sanitary inspector in Liverpool, and I went away for a holiday with himself and Auntie, and he used to take me down to the pier head, and he said that they kept the river clean, but it got rather filled up because the liner's up at the top.
Yes.
But there was a time that the liner couldn't get up or down because it hadn't been cleaned enough.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we were there one day and I was going to come home and Auntie and Uncle was coming with me. And there was a lot of people on the boat coming to Douglas and there was a big liner coming down. And the people was all wanting to get that side to see the liner. Well, my uncle told them for to get away or you'll be down under it because it was inclined to lean it forward.
Oh, yes, tilt it.
The liner had to turn in the Mersey, you see, and it did. And so the liner comes down. I never seen a liner before. And our captain shouted, "I've told you and told you," he said, "to get away," because the boat was beginning to lean. He said, "If you're down under that liner, don't blame me." He was really cross.
Yes.
Well, the liner came down and won't do. And we all kept back. Uncle said, "For goodness sake, get back from that thing." There was such a little space. And when we got past, my word, the people in the liner clapped and shouted hooray and all the rest of it. and even when they got out to the bar, they were signing and waving and shouting to us because we could easily have been down under it.
Aye.
And then, of course, during the war,
The men would be off gone, would they?
they were very short. That was the way I stayed from school. I would have been going for a nurse or something.
Yeah.
And then Mother wasn't well and I felt it was my duty. Then Father, he moved from that farm. He was a very enterprising young man. He
Yeah.
must have been. He wanted to go to America.
Did he?
He did, yes.
He wanted to go to America,
Yes.
but why didn't he go?
Because the farm he was in belonged to J.D. Clucas. And J.D. Clucas said, "Look, I'm not going to allow you to go. You're one of our best farming young men. And they were the sort we want in our farms." And he said, "Look here, I've got a farm." Well, it was up at the Lane village, really, near then. He said, "Coming on the market. It'll have to be advertised. But advertised or advertised not, you can have it." So Mother was so delighted and she said, well, that would be fine. And that was what happened.
That would be a bigger farm, was it?
Oh yes,
Yes.
bigger farm, and went right down to the sea,
Yeah.
and they had 2 labourers sleeping in, and at that time at the lane they had a reading room for the men in the evening. Now that was sensible, and there was a lady, she cleaned it, she lived near, and she set the fire and she lit it, and she would come in at 10 o'clock and she'd say, "Now, it's about time you were packed up because I've got to prepare this place for tomorrow. And I've got my own little place to see to." And they never denied her. They would go off and she would clean the fireplace and set the fire for the night. And they used to play on the board. They learned how to play darts and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
It was very good. And on the farms on the Sunday then, they didn't work, the men. They were off. And the men that was with Father, the 2 labourers, they went to the shore for a bathe.
What, in the sea?
Yes, in the sea.
Didn't you have tin baths in the house then?
Well, you would have tin baths for the babies when they were, but it's to the sea. The men folk was going. But anyhow, out Crenstal, that farm was at the Lane, near the Lane Chapel. And we went to the Lane Chapel and the Sunday school and all the rest of it. And we used to go out to the shore and paddle because the water was coming in from the trench and then it was meeting the sea. Well, one day there was a lady and gentleman from across. they had a little boy. They let him go and play in the river. That
Yeah.
was all right, but he got across. And then when the sea was coming in round his feet, he was going out further. And they sat up on a grass bank, fell asleep. When the time came, they couldn't find him, and he was never found.
Really?
No. Oh, they were awfully upset. Well, they should never have let him go because, you see, a child, the water comes in and then he goes out, you know, to meet it. He loves it.
Yes.
And, you know, he was never washed up in Scotland, Ireland, the Isle of Man or Wales or anywhere. And
No trace?
he was only little, you know, about 2 or 3. It was an awful thing. When they went away, they said they would never come back to the Isle of Man again. Well, I don't wonder. No. It was awfully sad. And then Father got on well with my oldest brother. The war was on and he had to stop at home because he couldn't get help. Otherwise, he was going to be a minister. He was a great worker in the church. I remember I had to go away. I had a bad eye. My doctor, he said, well, there's nobody here to see after it. And the war was on at that time. It wasn't quite finished. And Dr. Gost, a German, he had been in the island, but he had to get out and he'd gone to England and he was going to be 2 or 3 days there. And that's the person he said you should see. But your eye is an important thing. And he said, well, if you can get her away in the next 2 or 3 days, I'll see her. Well, me brother said, I'll go with you. And we had never been by air, so we went by boat. And it was an awful day. We were 7 hours going to Liverpool, you know, and the water was coming in. I know I was strapped down and it was an awful crossing. The waves, me brother said he managed to get down to the bottom and the poor sailors was there. They were stripped, putting the water out through the portholes. Because the water was coming down over the boat, coming down from the top. It was awful. He said he pitied them. But however, I was strapped and I was awful sick, but never mind. And I got to see Dr. Ghost and he was awfully nice and he put me to go back and forward to St. Paul's. We were up Mount Pleasant bed and breakfast and it happened to be a Manx lady that had it, and Mrs. Gone. She was very nice. She said the raid on Liverpool was shocking because there was a shelter up at Edge Hill and there was 300 in it and they got the 300 down and you know, well, Britain was never prepared and the hot water pipes burst. And you know, she said when they opened that, there wasn't one to take out. They were all burnt together like red herrings. It was an awful thing.
Terrible.
And so they had to seal it down and leave.
Sharing memories that obviously touched her very deeply. That was Ethel Gale, born in 1902 and aged 98 when she was talking with David Collister. And now, as we say, for something completely different from the Manx Radio archive room. Multi-talented Laurence Kermode, who worked as a printer for the Isle of Man Times and Examiner, was also a professional toastmaster, a painter, and well known as a singer with the popular trio Mike, Al and Laurie. He loved the limelight and, as I said earlier, he was still competing successfully in the Guild at the age of 100. He lived life to the full, which is why it's hard to know which stories to share with you from the archive room. So let's start with early days. Laurence Kermode was born in 1915.
I was born in the Isle of Man in Castletown in 62 Maloo Street, actually. It was a baker's and my grandparents lived there, my maternal grandparents. And my earliest recollections of anything were in Liverpool, but I've been thinking it over since. I wondered how I got to Liverpool, and I thought that I was taken there when I was a baby after I was born. But on reflection, I think that it's possible that my parents were already living in Liverpool at the beginning of the First World War, 1914, and that my mother had come home to her parents to have me.
So you'd be born Manx?
Yes, that I was born at her mother's house, in Castletown. And my very, very earliest recollections is being taken out into the street in Liverpool and to look up into the sky and to see a Zeppelin passing over. So that must have been during or towards the end of the First World War.
That's right.
84 Dorset Road we lived, Tewbrook. I also have vivid memories of a man who was demobbed, and he must have been a neighbour. He had his handcart with all his gear on out in the street outside of our house. And on that there was his rifle and his tin hat. And me, being a little boy, I wanted the gun, of course, naturally, you see. But I didn't get the gun, but he did give me the tin hat. And I had that tin hat for many, many years. As a matter of fact, when we came back again to the Isle of Man, I was in a little bit of a gang. The initiation ceremony, you had to wear this damn tin hat, and one of the leader hit us on the head with it 3 times. We only had to bang on the head. I tell you, it was...
Well, you did your early education in Liverpool, but of course you went to St Thomas's School in Douglas as well.
I did indeed, yes. Well, I started when I came back to the Isle of Man, and it was in 1921. I left school when I was 14 because we did in those days. There were 2 of us were coming up to 14, ready to leave school, Edwin and myself. Now, the then headmaster, his name was George Kennell, another man who was a printer, whose name was Marshall Brideson, who was eventually to be one of the founders of Brideson Horrocks. Marshall Brideson, he was the machine room foreman in Louis Myers, you see. He said one day to George Kennell, "You got any likely lads that for an apprenticeship?" So he said to Edwin and myself, "Either of you interested?" Well, Edwin wasn't, because Edwin was more academic, I suppose, than me. I wanted to do something with my hands, you see. Yeah. He said, "Well, there's this job going with Louis Meyer as a printer." Louis G. Meyer, 19 Duke Street it was. So I went and I saw Mr. Meyer. That was it. I was taken on. But we left school in short trousers. And I went to work in short trousers.
Really?
Oh, yes. And eventually, a pair of trousers, they were cut down. I wouldn't admit it, but there were a pair of my father's trousers cut down for me, because one of the fellas in the works with us, he used to call me tragedy trousers, And he said, "The old man's trousers." You went, "Laurence?" I said, "No, they're not, of course they were, but I wouldn't admit it, you see."
Well, would you get paid as an apprentice? Because a lot.
Oh yes, 10 shillings a week.
All right.
Which was very good, because printers were amongst the trades. They were very well paid.
Yeah. So when you got home and told your parents you got the job,
I said, "I'm starting." Yes, and I said, "I need a black apron." They said to tell your mother to get an apron. So over the weekend, she had to make a black apron, and she made the apron for me, and then I started down in the cellar. You wouldn't be allowed to work there now, but we worked in the cellar. And the very first job was to stand behind a great big machine to guide the sheets, printed matter that were coming off. And there were great big sheets, and it was a book. And the book that was being printed was Sophia Morrison's Manx Fairy Tales.
Oh, really?
Now, the cover was a linen piece, and that was printed with colourless ink, and then they had to be dusted with gold dust. It was what we call bronzing powder. That's another thing you wouldn't be allowed to do, because I was stood there with these covers of the book coming off the machine in this colourless ink, and I had to dip a piece of cotton wool into this thing which you get up your nose and all sorts of things, and dust them. Then you had to dust them off afterwards with another piece, a clean piece, and then of course they were sent up to the bookbinders. But you see, Louis Meyer, unfortunately, he went bankrupt after I'd been there 2.5 years. Now then, this is the foundation of Brideson and Horrocks started there, because there was Marshall Brideson as the machine room foreman. Harry Horrocks was the senior apprentice, who was 19 when they folded up. I was the junior apprentice. I'd be 16 and a half by that time. But Horrocks and Marshall Brideson and Harry Horrocks, they started up in Market Street, and I was out of work. And I remember Harry Horrocks, he said, "What are you going to do, Laurence?" I said, "I'll come with you." I said, "When do I start?" He said, "Tomorrow." Well, it was Saturday. Well, of course, in those days you worked 5.5 days a week.
Yes.
and that was in 1931.
You stayed with Brides and Horrocks as a printer,
As a printer.
virtually 3 whole career.
No. Half of my. I've been in printing all my life.
Yes.
26 years I did with Brides and Horrocks or so, and I did another 26 with the Examiner and Times. And Hopper Collister, I worked with the Nelson Press for a while too.
While you were doing this then, presumably you got into the artistic side of life, and particularly into singing.
I'd always been interested in singing, dance bands. I've sung in the Pallady dance. But I realised that when I was being asked to sing at functions, like in Masonic meetings and things like that, I needed to have a bit of a repertoire, you see, of straight stuff. You couldn't get up and sing the pop stuff. So I said to Harry Pickard, I was friendly with Harry, and I said, could you give me a few lessons, Harry? He said, aye. He said, yes, certainly. He said, I'll help you, you'll help me. At that time, he was the choir master of St Ninian's Church.
Oh, yeah.
So he said, will you come and sing? Well, I'd been brought up a Methodist. So I said, aye, okay. I said, but I don't know the church. So he said, you soon learn it. So he gave me lessons, and I went to sing, and I was in the church choir there. And he said, well, do you want to go in for this properly, enter the guild and that sort of thing? I said, yes. So he said, okay. So he put me in for the open tenor class. And the first time I was in, I won. It was very, very flattering, really. But at the same time, it wasn't, because I was immediately catapulted into what we call the special class. I am now what you might call a special tenor, amongst the special tenor class, you see. With the open tenor, you just had to sing one song, but with the special, you had to sing 2. They were a lot harder songs you sang. Although the song that I won with, the open tenor solo, has since been used in the special class. It was Our Moon of My Delight That Knows No Wane. It's a beautiful song, but it was a difficult song to sing. But I was lucky, and as I say, I won. I often say to people, I start at the top and work my way to the bottom, because the best I ever did in the special tenor was to tie for second place.
But before you sang, didn't you play an instrument? I seem to remember you played a banjo.
That's another phase. Yes, that was earlier. I'd only be 18. Yeah. Now, I mentioned earlier Edwin Crellin, who was in school with me. Now, I was friendly with Edwin and Bobby Kelly and Freddie Ogley. We were all in the First Douglas Scouts. But by this time at 18, Bobby was a wonderful pianist, Bobby Kelly. Yeah. And Edwin was, as I said before, he was the intellectual type. He sent away for a saxophone, and he'd learned it before it came. Well, he'd learned it by reading the book. Yes, he was one of those type. And Freddie, he was the drummer, you see. Yeah. I was the singer. Before the days of microphones, I sang through a megaphone, and I've got the photograph to prove it. I'll show it to you later on. We were the Knights of Rhythm. Bobby Kelly, piano, Edwin Crellin, saxophone, Freddie Ogley on the drums, and Laurence Kermode was the singer holding the banjo. But my career with the Knights of Rhythm came to an end by virtue of the fact that the banjo didn't belong to me, it belonged to my uncle. He lent it to me, and then he must have fallen on hard times because he wanted the banjo back. and so, of course, that was the end of my career as a banjo player. It was the end of the 60s. The folk revival had started. I got mixed up with the Mike, Laurie and Al story. How I come to be involved with Mike.
Well, we've barely got started, and I can promise you we'll be hearing much more from Laurence Kermode in future visits to the archive room. But we've got to leave his conversation with David Collister there, because it's time for our penultimate visit to the little dark cupboard. The serialisation of our archive radio play, first broadcast here on Manx Radio 50 years ago, with actors drawn from the island's drama groups of the time. Have you recognised any voices? You can see if you're correct when I give you the full cast list at the end of next week's final episode. But let's have a quick recap ahead of episode 7. Husband and wife, Bill and Eva, hiking on Dartmoor, have got lost in thick fog and taken refuge in a house after finding the front door conveniently unlocked and the occupants not at home. A brief visit from a neighbour reveals that the house is owned by Captain and Mrs. Reethy, who are in the habit of leaving the door unlocked when they go out shopping. The neighbour tells Bill and Eva that a convict has escaped from Dartmoor prison, but the hostile conditions on the exposed moors means that, like all other escapees, This one will certainly be caught quickly. No sooner has the neighbour left than a man appears at Eva's side. And yes, it's the escaped convict wearing badly fitting but expensive clothes that he's clearly raided from Captain Reethy's wardrobe. But this isn't nearly as bad as it sounds. To Eva's delight, she recognises the escaped convict as her much-loved Smitty, her aunt's kindly gardener, who rescued her when, as a terrified little child, she accidentally shut herself in a little dark cupboard under the stairs, which has left her deeply scarred with an absolute dread of confined spaces. It's down to good old Smitty, real name Smithers, to persuade Eva that he's only in prison because he was short of money and fell into bad company, and has been wickedly, wrongly convicted of attacking an old lady.
That little dark cupboard's haunted me ever since, and it always will. I carry it about with me, in my mind.
Well, the one thought in my mind at this particular moment is, what next? Do you know if there's a telephone in this house? The best thing we can do is to ring the prison at once and tell them the hunt's up. You're here.
Oh, Bill!
You left your prison clothes upstairs?
Yes, sir.
Then if you take my tip, you'll hop back into them right now. They'll add a good stiff bit to your sentence for this little jaunt. If you're discovered in stolen clothes, it may cost you even more.
Yes, sir.
And you better look sharp about it. The owner of those pretty things may be back in at any moment.
You don't know what you're doing, sir. You don't know what you're sending me back to.
You sent yourself there in the first place, didn't you?
Not Dartmoor, sir. A man doesn't get Dartmoor for what I did. It was the violence part what put me in there. And it wasn't true. I couldn't, sir. It isn't in me to hurt a poor old woman.
Well, I know nothing about that.
Oh, but I do. Every word he says is true. I've always thought of Smitty as one of the kindest men I've ever known.
It's years since you knew him. You were only a child.
And what of that? Children are often quicker to sense such things than grown-ups. I knew then and I know now that Smitty couldn't hurt a living thing.
Thank you, Miss Eva.
You were in the house that night and you were there to rob.
I'm not denying it, sir. Not that part of it. I'm not trying to excuse myself, sir. I'm only trying to tell you I never touched the old woman. If I'd been 10 times as desperate, I could never do such a thing like that. I tried to make and leave her alone.
Oh, I'm sure you did, Smitty. I'm sure. Oh, please, Bill. Please don't be so hard with him.
My dear Eva, I'm merely trying to be dispassionate and sensible.
Can't you be a little kind as well? And let him go?
What?
And let him go.
Now, Eva, don't be silly.
I don't often ask you for anything, do I? But now I'm imploring you, Bill, not to send him back to that terrible place. Oh, let's let him go. Please, Bill.
But even if we did... Oh, good heavens, don't you understand? They'd get him.
There's always a chance, sir. Just a chance.
Oh, and even it's only a millionth of a chance. Let him have it. Oh, please, let him have it.
But don't you realise...
Miss, you're an angel from heaven to speak for me like this.
Let him slip away now, will you? Will you? Oh, you needn't be afraid. Even if he's caught, he won't tell that we helped him. You won't, will you?
Not if they tore me limb from limb. I promise you that.
Bill? Here you are, Smitty. You'll need money. Take this and go quickly.
Oh, Miss Eva, how can I ever thank you? If I do get away,
Oh, never mind about that. There just isn't time. Oh, why don't you go? Go on!
Yes, Miss Eva.
Oh, goodbye, Smitty. Oh, and good luck.
Eva.
He's away by now. Yes, Bill?
We've done a very, very foolish thing, my love.
Oh, no. No, a very right thing. It was he who let me out of the dark cupboard, and now I've set him free.
Well, that's just it. You haven't. It's like setting a caged bird free, knowing that the hawks are all gathered to pounce.
The fog's beginning to lift. It's getting lighter.
Well, that should help him a lot. You realise if any of this gets known, we're in an exceedingly ugly jam. There's a pretty stiff reckoning for helping chain breakers. Oh, I'd be ruined.
Oh, no, you wouldn't. I'd take the blame myself, all of it.
Oh, while I stood by and let you do it. Oh, that would go down damn well, I must say.
Oh, listen, Bill. I know that Smitty would never split on us, just as I know that he would never hurt that old woman. It's like he said. It just isn't in him to. Oh, don't worry, dear. I'd stake my life on Smitty.
Well, we've staked our reputations on him anyway. And what's more, we'd better get out of here before the Reethys turn up. Meeting them now might complicate matters more than somewhat. You mustn't worry about the fog. It's lifting all right.
I'm not. I'm just wondering where Smitty's got to.
Slap into the waiting arms of PC-49, I expect. Come on. Hey, there's someone coming. A man and a woman. I can hear their voices.
Gosh, it'll be the Wreathies. Can we
No,
go out?
they're almost here. Get back. And for God's sake, try not to look so self-conscious.
But Bill...
Shh, they're on us.
Is this the sound of the Wreathies coming home at last? How will they react to finding Bill and Eva in their house? And just how much, or how little, will Bill and Eva tell them? Don't miss the final episode of The Little Dark Cupboard, a radio play first broadcast on Manx Radio 50 years ago. The full cast will be revealed next week, and I'll also have some great stories about the making of the legendary George Formby film No Limit, released 90 years ago this year. An anniversary that will be celebrated in a new exhibition in the Manx Museum opening at the end of May. But that's all that we have time for this week. So let's turn off the lights and close the door. But I do hope you'll join me again at the door to the archive room next Thursday evening at 5:30. I'm Judith Lay saying thank you for listening and wishing you a very good evening.